Are you a scaling SaaS founder?
Ready to make the leap from leading a team to leading an organization? Join us each week as we refill your think tank with actionable tips and strategies from great business minds you know and those who don't know yet. This is SaaS Fuel with your host, 5-time entrepreneur, SaaS founder, and globetrotting adventurer, Jeff Maines.
Hey, welcome back to the SaaS Fuel podcast, where relationships are like threads in a grand tapestry, individually special and together a masterpiece. I'm your host, Jeff Maines. B2B SaaS founders like you scale from 7 figures, which is good, to 8 and 9 figures, which is outstanding. Together, we supercharge revenue growth, create premium valuation, and craft the business you're proud of and a life of impact and freedom that you love. We've been working with clients over the last few weeks planning 2024, doing what we call laying out the train track so that we start the year with momentum. And I've done that in all my companies as well. And AI, of course, is a hot topic. And one of the things that we've wrestled with is where and how to use it. We've run 100 different experiments over this last year and learned a few things. One is that the debate between automation and personal touch is like choosing between a sleek sports car and a reliable old roadster. I mean, both have their charm. But knowing when to hit the gas on automation or when to cruise with a human touch can make all the difference in how your customers, employees, and partners perceive and interact with your business. Now, a SaaS company I think that does this very, very well is Shopify. E-commerce is a tough business with an incredibly wide spectrum of people. Some are really tech savvy and others are just not at all. They do sell to business owners and some very impressive businesses, but also to individuals with zero experience. And I think that they masterfully balance automation with human connection. Their platform automates the nitty-gritty of online sales, yet they offer personalized, empathetic support to their users. It's like a harmonious blend of efficiency and warmth, tech, and touch. And that's extraordinarily hard to do. In our meetings over the last few weeks, we talked through some different ways that leaders navigate this crossroads of automating and humanizing. And here's the distillation of our conversation and a roadmap that may be helpful for you. First, we want to automate the mundane. Identify processes that are repetitive, time-consuming. Think like data entry, scheduling, or basic customer queries. An example that we put our knowledge base into a chatbot so clients can easily find answers quickly, even when they don't know exactly what to ask. Automation here is like setting your business on cruise control and freeing up your team to focus on areas that genuinely require a human touch. It's about efficiency without sacrificing effectiveness. Think about what outcome does the person want? Does automating that outcome enhance or take away from the experience? Second, we want to humanize the critical. There are a lot of moments in business that demand a personal touch. Complex customer issues, nurturing employee relationships, or building partnerships. These are the areas where a human voice and empathy and understanding are absolutely irreplaceable. This is where trust is built, loyalty is forged, and relationships are deepened. It's about knowing that behind every email, chat, purchase order, there's a human with unique needs and emotions. So think about how can I deliver a memorable experience in this moment? Third is a feedback loop. Create channels for regular feedback from prospects, customers, employees, and partners. And use that feedback to continually assess the effectiveness of your automation and personalization strategies. This isn't like a set it and forget it deal. It's a dynamic, evolving process. It's about listening and adapting and improving. And I mentioned some experiments earlier. Several of those were absolute bombs. AI seemed like a great idea. And because we had a feedback loop, we learned quickly that we needed to change. But most interestingly, some automations were successful early on until the market caught up and everybody was doing it. And then we had to change our process to deliver a better experience. But by balancing automation with a personal touch, leaders can build stronger, more meaningful relationships that transcend transactions and nurture loyalty. It's not about just being a well-oiled machine, which is cool. It's about being a machine with a heart. Our expert last week was Jason Kruger, president and founder of Signature Analytics. Jason demystified finance and helped us run our company smarter, more profitably, and with less stress. Our founder last Tuesday was Adam Robinson, founder and CEO of retention.com. They turn anonymous web visitors into friends. Adam talked about building in public, creating community, and launching a second product specifically for B2B SaaS companies. Very cool. You got to check that out. If you missed either episode, go back and give them a listen. My guest today is Alex Boyd, founder of Aware, a LinkedIn commenting tool, and Revenue Zen, a B2B growth agency. On a long and winding journey through sales, marketing, and social media, Alex focuses on helping people and companies build marketing assets that pay dividends for years to come. Welcome, Alex Boyd. Hey, Alex, welcome to SaaS Fuel.
Thank you so much for having me on. It's good to be here, Jeff.
Tell me a little bit about your background and your journey from sales, marketing to the companies you've started now, Aware and Revenue Zen.
Yeah. I got into sales accidentally. I applied to client services and research, and they just didn't have those jobs available, and they had the sales job available. So here is this like more shy, quantitative focused, person coming out of college with a philosophy degree, ending up getting kind of shoehorned into a sales role. But I was not to be deterred and decided that I could pretty much make a process and do my own version of it. I didn't have to do what my sales manager wanted me to do. And that was just a more kind of product knowledge led type of sale, which worked really, really well. I ended up being one of the top sellers at my first job, which led me to my next job, which was, an even better kind of environment. Ended up having an opportunity for me to go into leadership and build a team, which I did. Great experience just going from like sales to, that director level where you're really managing a department, kind of more of a P&L. And from there, I just thought, okay, well, from here, it's not too much of a leap to be able to do this from scratch. So I started my B2B marketing agency almost 7 years ago. And Aware was actually started about 2.5 years ago, but kind of as a response to the struggles I was facing in doing social selling and LinkedIn for my agency. Fun fact, we launched Aware and had to scrap it 1.5 years later because we built the wrong product. Aware V2 was rebuilt from scratch and relaunched maybe several months ago. So this particular SaaS business is in a very fresh iteration. But that's kind of how I was led here. And I think my sales background led me to the marketing background, and the social selling and LinkedIn stuff that our SaaS helps people do is really like, it's a combination of both. I mean, it generates high quality discovery calls via marketing. So it's sort of both of those things. And that's why social selling is kind of the name of the game, what our SaaS does, and why it kind of combines both sales and marketing cleanly.
I like that. So tell me about social selling. For those that don't know, what is it? How does it work? And what do you mean by social selling?
Can mean a lot of things, anything from on the most aggressive end, people talk about it as just using LinkedIn to do outbound. And that's not really how I'd call social selling. I'd call that using LinkedIn to do outbound.
Right.
But then there's social media, which people typically think of as using your company or brand social media account to just push content out. And social selling is a bit of the like in the trenches piece of social media. So it's the combination of putting out content, of engaging with other people, and then taking those interactions offline to do selling. My one-liner for social selling is that it's helping people publicly. So instead of doing all of your helping people privately in consulting and discovery calls, you just do that in public. And the way you do that is you demonstrate your credibility publicly. You highlight your customers' results, what you have helped people do, and then you take those interactions offline and sell. And this has resulted in $5.2 million of sourced revenue as of the last several years or so for across my businesses, just doing this. And I track that in CRM and Stripe and everything. So it's all kind of logged and documented. And Aware just helps you do all those things, faster and in a more targeted way.
And how does it do that? Tell me about Aware and how that works and facilitates the social selling process.
Well, normally if you open up LinkedIn and you want to do some engagement, you want to write some content and just sort of be, do some biz dev on LinkedIn, you'll open up linkedin.com and you'll see the LinkedIn feed, which is this glorious big black box kind of, our
Yes.
fancy algorithm shoved it together and is designed to make you spend more time on LinkedIn, which number one is in contrast to our goals as founders. You don't really want to spend as much time on LinkedIn. You don't really want to consume a lot of ads. You want to do what you want to do. You want to go after the right people. You want to engage with people that you chose. You want to talk about the
Right.
topics that you decided. And so Aware lets you build curated and customized and dynamic feeds of posts that you can engage with. So instead of relying on what LinkedIn gives you, you make your own version of that. So you can we dynamically create a feed of posts of everyone who engages with you. We show you only their posts, which helps create momentum in your community. You can create a post of any post, a feed of any post containing the phrase SaaS founders or something, right? You could just, whatever you dream up, you can target any feed that you like. And then we have all these fancy charts and graphs to help you analyze your performance, see how you're doing, benchmark yourself, and all the above. Some CRM integration stuff too, but the main thing people do in Aware is build these awesome custom curated feeds rather than relying on the LinkedIn native one or their bookmarks bar, their spreadsheet, or some other kind of non-SaaS solution to do that same idea.
Sure. That's fantastic. And it is a great solution. I mean, anybody that is looking for something like that should definitely check it out and give it a try. 'Cause it is a really good solution. But you said this is version 2. What was the difference in version 1, and how did you said you missed the mark there and rebuilt it?
Yeah.
What happened? What's that story?
Classic SaaS mistake. I mean, is my first SaaS company. So I was making that cardinal mistake of building a cool product. Probably the kiss of death in SaaS is to make a cool product, isn't it? And
Yes. Oh, that's cool.
it's really cool. That's super cool. That's neat. And the customers were saying that. And I was like, yeah, they think it's cool. I'm like, oh God, no. So the problem was V1 was essentially a dashboard of alerts. Fine, but a couple of mistakes. Now we can charge some money for a dashboard of alerts, but the problem with the way it was architected was it was a data hog. So our server usage
Wow.
to get these alerts was just like, an ocean of data. So we had to price it pretty high. So we were charging $200 a month, $100, $200 a month for the alerts. And it was alerts of when your prospects that you selected your criteria, and it was like when people meeting your prospect criteria engage with other relevant, significant people, which is interesting. But we didn't let people do anything from there. Then people were saying, great, well, how do I act on that?
Right.
So then they were like, so then I got to go to LinkedIn. And I was like, yeah, you just open up LinkedIn and do it. And they were like, okay. But it didn't cross that barrier of like, I'm using this every day. And the killer thing is, I don't know if other founders have been in this position, but I wasn't using my own product. And I was like, oh, this is not good. And I'm thinking to myself, I don't really, it's not as easy. And from there it was like, if we're built something that's for people like me and I'm not using it, that's a bad sign. So we had that heart to heart as co-founders, and you probably hate, if you have a co-founder, you probably hate that heart to heart where you have to be like, hey man, should we talk about not doing this? Or like, pretty much scrapping and
Right.
it wasn't like, break up, but it was like, I think we need to scrap this. So we did. And then we said, okay, we're not doing that again. We're going to give people something that you primarily do stuff with, not the stuff you look at, but stuff you do things with. So V2 was all about build your list and do your engagement right from here. You'll do it faster, better. It's like a better way to use the thing you already do. You have this job to be done. Here's a new way of doing it better. It's cool, but no one said cool product. They were like, this is super useful. It's like, okay. So now
That's different buying signal right there.
very, right? So like that was the feedback we needed, is just like, and that was my own just happy years as a SaaS founder. And yeah, big lesson is if you have built a cool product that people think is neat and you don't use it constantly, the very V1 alpha, you better be using the alpha V1 all the time because you can't find a better way of doing whatever it's you to do. That's a sign you probably built something that's neat and cool and no one's going to actually spend money on it, which we ran into.
Well, what are some when we look at demand gen, what are some overlooked or underestimated channels to do that for B2B?
Um, I mean, LinkedIn's kind of the obvious one, but I don't know if
Yeah.
people overlook it. Um, Zooming out a little bit, I think the most overlooked one right now is probably community in general. Like building and maintaining and nurturing a really good community. And LinkedIn is just one of the ways to do that. It's kind of the underpinning reason to do it. Everyone in B2B marketing and demand gen, the default is kind of spending money on ads. And there's nothing inherently wrong with that. But when you get into this, like, let me just dump money into content syndication so that, hundreds of people who are barely targeted are going to download this ebook, maybe, like that whole model maybe used to work, but it's just been so blown out of proportion that the
Yeah.
stuff that is easy to dump money into and get what looks like results, that's super saturated. The stuff that's hard to do and squishy and harder to track, that tends to work better. So in general, unfortunately, I think we know this from being SaaS founders, is you usually can't track and attribute perfectly the stuff that works. It's going to be that
Right.
kind of squishy thing, you know? And people talk about, oh, word of mouth and referrals, this like natural viral growth loop is the best way to grow it. Like, yeah, but how do you nurture that? So I've been really focused on building community, as I think a lot of SaaS companies who are growing and doing demand gen are putting more attention into this. Like Apollo puts tons of energy and money, lots of money into community. Um, they flew me down to San Francisco to record a social selling academy course for their academy. There was an 8-person professional video crew in a studio. Like they're dumping money into it.
Wow.
Yeah. There was hair and makeup for me. God knows I need it because I got all the flyaways and everything. But I mean, that's a significant investment, and they're all over LinkedIn. I mean, they're engaging everywhere. Their brand account is engaging everywhere. They're one of the few who are really doing it right, I think, in SaaS. But you also don't need to do it with such a big budget. Like Dan Schmelia is incredible if you give him lots of money to work with. Um, I don't think he'd know what to do without a budget. But some community marketers in SaaS and demand gen, I mean, I also wouldn't know what to do with a big budget. So I'm kind of on the opposite end where
Yeah.
my default is more this kind of bootstrapper, like I'll get it done. Um, I know what to do with, 10 grand a month. Oh, great. I'll hire a fractional this person and a contract that and a little bit of ad
Right.
budget, but I'm going to make a splash with a little. Um, and that's, I think, a big overlooked part of this is you can do a lot with a little if you're willing to get your hands dirty. Um, and that's where I think bootstrap SaaS founders have so much to teach more corporate B2B demand gen marketers who,
Yes.
by and large, are more kind of removed, sort of, I just turn the dials, I'm not part of this. There's sort of like this emotional lack of investment almost, where like SaaS founders, you are in it. Like you made this thing. You're getting it going from nothing. You're blowing in the bells of the fire, as it were, yourself.
Yeah.
Versus the demand general, I feel like sometimes is this, it's not as involved. You are kind of like piloting the drone versus on the ground. And I think just getting on the ground with these kind of community building initiatives, make that Slack group, participate in it, pull the video camera out, post that video, leave 50 comments a week via your brand account on prospect LinkedIn posts. There's just so much you can do that doesn't require a budget, that is wildly effective. And people want that human touch. They can kind of feel when you're blowing in the bellows versus piloting the drone. And
Right.
I think that's a big lesson we got to learn is get involved. Don't be scared of it.
So somebody wants to start a community. I think community-led growth is fantastic. What should they be thinking about, or what should they do in order to move that forward and make it happen?
Well, I think first you need the right person to be managing it, and it's okay to admit if you're not the right person. I think that the choice of tool is not the place to start. So the tool is
That's
like,
where we all want to start because that's easy.
yeah, sure. And it's funny because you have these great community marketers who are like, man, the first question people ask me is, what tool do I use? And I'm like, that's not the question you should be asking me. Um, So, I mean, the unsatisfying but true answer is you have to start with the strategy of like, the hell is the point of your community? You should be able to say the point of the community. It doesn't have to be a gated, bounded community of like, if you enter this Slack group, you are in our community. It can be this sort of amorphous thing that lives around social media and word of mouth. And, you might call that dark social or whatever the term is, but it's be able to say the purpose of your community. So the purpose of Community for Aware is, I mean, the bullet points are to get more people doing social selling in the way we think it should be done, to let successful social sellers share ideas, say that 5 times fast, and ultimately to then use that to create more brand equity for Aware to cause more sales. So like that's the strategy of our community building. And if you can't say your version of that, then you should probably be able to say that first. Once you've all agreed on what the strategy is, then you can do things like, okay, well, where do our people hang out most?
Right.
Should we give them a new place to hang out, or should we go where they are? Or should we do both? Um, from there, you might begin to think about tools. Like step 3, right, is like maybe pick a tool. And if the answer is, well, our market's just lurking on LinkedIn, then the answer is we should probably post more on LinkedIn, engage with them where we can. Maybe we buy Aware to do that engagement, but like that's one version. Or maybe it's like our buyers really want a gated private environment to hang out in. Then, well, we should create a Slack group. We should use our social media to increase the size of our Discord or Slack or Circle channel or whatever it is.
Right.
And know your audience. Like, don't create a Discord channel for VPs of sales. They don't know what that is, and they're going to think you're a giant geek, right?
Exactly.
But like, strategy first, then pick channels and things you want to do. Finally, pick tools, I'd say. And for me, it's always been, if I'm selling them to marketing and founders, then LinkedIn is kind of an obvious choice. So for me, it's been easy. But I mean, hell, I've been in Slack, I've been in Google groups that are enormous communities. I mean, can you imagine? But like, yeah, it's a huge 30,000 person community of sales operations people, and they just want it in their email. So there it is. Modern Sales Pros is a giant community that some people don't even know about, which is nuts. And yet it's one of the biggest communities for that role that exists. So do it in that order, I think, and don't jump to picking a tool. I say this as somebody who sells a tool, but yeah, don't do that first. Think about the strategy first, and then choose the tool based on that.
I think that is great advice. Really figuring out that strategy. If you want that human connection with fellow B2B SaaS founders, check out today's sponsor, Champion Leadership Group. It is the ultimate resource for SaaS founders and C-suite executives to continue to develop themselves, scale their companies, and never walk alone on the journey. Supercharge revenue by leveraging time-tested SaaS growth principles, toolkits, playbooks, frameworks, all designed to help you scale ARR from 7 to 8 to 9 figures. Collaborate with an elite network of SaaS visionaries as we uplevel ourselves and have some fun along the way. Confidently take that right next step that turns into a quantum leap of profitable growth, premium valuation, and freedom. Learn more at championleadership.com. So what is your take, if we're not picking the tool first, what is your take on doing it on the platform versus owning the group and doing it on something like Slack or Circle or something like that?
Yeah, I mean, the argument of don't build on rented land is interesting, but who really gets kicked off the rented land these days? Like you could say the same thing for, I don't want to make a WeWork analogy. That's absolutely terrible. They really did build on rented land and got their asses kicked for it.
Right.
But a commercial real estate operator can own or rent land.
Sure.
I mean, I think if you're building a community on a social media platform and you're not doing it in a way that is pissing off the platform, you're fine. And the built-in reach is hard to get elsewhere unless you have a different distribution channel. So the arguments to be made are, first, do the people that are going to be in this community, do they want to be where they are on the social media platform, or do they actually prefer, for some reason we can define, do they want to be in a separate place? So maybe the reasons to do a private community might be privacy. Like they are sharing things that they do not want heard. publicly elsewhere. Um, Compliance. Maybe they are talking about things that they can't share. Maybe there is an NDA to enter the group. Um, it could be format. Maybe the best format of having these types of conversations that are in depth about one specific topic or thread is just better as a forum. Like a Google group with an email thread, everyone responds to it, keeps that thread nice and tidy. Whereas a LinkedIn post with a bunch of comments doesn't really keep that as tidy. Um,
Right.
so, the argument is think about how the community is actually going to be made and structured. And again, I'm a big LinkedIn person. I think you can do a pretty good job of that with LinkedIn posts because you post about something. There's a comment thread. You can engage with someone else. I kind of prefer a little bit more chaotic nature of it. And my market, B2B marketers and
Sure.
founders, they're okay with that level of chaos. But IT operations people, no. They keep it like we're talking about this. Please answer the question, and then it's more neat, and that's kind of how their thought patterns go. So again, it's like that's why when selling Aware, we have to be really mindful of who we're selling to and does it make sense for them. So we really talk about this being a good fit for those that want to build a community and engage on LinkedIn. And if your primary buyer is defense contractors, you're probably not going to be a great fit for Aware, or maybe it's just a very small part of your strategy. So that kind of influences the knowledge of how to build a community influences how we market. And
Of
I think the
course.
same should go for a lot of SaaS founders is if you're good at the thing that your customers are doing, you can be a lot better at marketing your product than if you just sort of, had an idea and never bothered to develop the skill of what it is your customers are doing. I mean, if you sell podcasting software, you better be good at podcasting, you know, uh,
Right. Right.
versus just being like, oh, I think there's an opportunity to sell to podcasters. Like, no. You have to do the thing. Again, my whole ethos is get your hands dirty, be involved.
Yes.
Um, and there's so many ways that apply as well to SaaS and marketing and choice of community platform. But it's what I do if I'm working with any client for our agency is we get our hands dirty, we learn it. They say, well, how do you onboard to our subject matter knowledge? We do. We accomplish that. We get in there and don't take shortcuts, and we learn it. If I was going to take a job at some point, I would do the same thing. I'd spend the first whole week just learning the subject matter before I start
Sure.
doing stuff. Um, that's I think a big thing that SaaS people should get their heads around too, and like be willing to do.
Yeah. One reason I love bootstrap founders, there's a million reasons, and that is just one is that they do get their hands dirty and they are really involved in the process and understand the industry and their customers.
Totally.
I think a lot of times far better than somebody who's just like, there's money to be made in this industry, so we made a product for it.
Yeah. And the venture-backed founders can often have a huge passion for the industries they're in. But I
Yes.
have noticed that it's more, you don't bootstrap SaaS unless you're that the probability that you are passionate about something is much higher for bootstrap SaaS. I had to qualify. I was like, I can think of some bootstrappers who don't really give a shit about whatever it is they're doing, but primarily, you do that if you're kind of a crazy person who wants to just do an awesome job in this particular industry, and you're just like, the solution should
Right.
exist. I'm going to build it. No one tell me what to do.
Yeah.
Do you notice this thing too, where like bootstrappers are just have this independent streak where like you
Yes.
don't want people to tell you what to do and the money be
Yep.
damned. Maybe I can make more money. I don't care. I'll grow slower. Don't tell me what to do. And you're like opinionated on the thing that you're building?
Yeah, I really like that. It's that independent spirit and just the entrepreneurial spirit of, I'm going to go and I'm going to conquer this mountain.
Yeah, I'm going to climb it. I'm going to do it. And I
Yeah.
don't want to have a board meeting every 100 meters up the mountain, you know?
Right. I'm just going to go get it done.
Yeah,
And they do amazing things. And there is certainly a time for funding in a place, and there's a
sure.
million ways to fund companies. But it's just that independent spirit of there's a problem and I'm going to go solve it and make happy clients and really make an impact in the industry. It's not just about dollars, not just about growth at all costs, but there's something bigger there. There's a passion to really serve.
I think so. Yeah. I mean, I've thought about some methods of funding. Like I've actually never done an AppSumo, for example. Um, Actually, I'm curious your thoughts on that too, because I've been told you got to do it. It's going to bring a few $100,000 of cash flow, blah, blah. And, don't worry about the servicing costs over the lifetime. And my co-founder's on the opposite end. He's just like, nope, I don't want to support lifetime. We don't need the money. And I'm kind of in the middle of like, well, it would be nice to have the money. We could do a lot with that. But yeah, I mean, I've gotten advice both ways there. I'm sure there's a good argument to be made, but I haven't gone that route yet. I don't have like a definitive answer on it. I'm just sort of like, yeah, maybe I'm still considering it.
It's one of those things. It is a catch-22. Maybe for a limited time, or you do some sort of a promotion, something like that. But I think if you want to build a long-term SaaS, it's all about the recurring revenue.
Yeah,
And so, not having that over the long term, I think can hurt valuation.
definitely. Yeah, I
But
mean,
it depends. It can be a really good way to raise cash in the early days, especially. So if it's launch time and you give some early adopters a super sweetheart deal that's forever, it's not all bad.
yeah, I think too, if we had done it with V1 where we had this giant server hog data crunch and our cogs was super high, bad idea. But if somehow you have
Yeah.
like a very data light or like super high gross margin, then probably a better argument to be made. So that's probably how I would counsel someone is just like look at the financials of it, which is where I
And
feel
what's
like
the
you're
cost
going
of
there.
revenue? What's the cost of serving that, over the course of, 10 years?
Yeah, potentially. I mean, you're going to have those zealots that are just, they love your product and they're constantly asking you questions and they're taking full advantage of that lifetime deal.
Yeah, it's always interesting, thinking about something like that. Should I? Because there's an upside and downside to every decision. And
Yeah.
so I think it's different for different companies. But what is the cost of servicing that over a long period of time? And can you get enough cash now to make that worthwhile, or use the cash to build up other business and that revenue stream while that's you know, while that's happening?
Yeah. What are you going to do with that? I mean, that's like the nature
Yeah,
of strategy, right? It's not some empty word. It's like, if I do this, then we'll be able to do that with that. It's just like
right.
this is the
There's got to
check.
be a bigger plan. It's not
Yeah.
just we're going to sell some lifetime stuff just because we can.
Because you want some money, like,
Yeah.
yeah, I
It has
totally
to
get
be a
that.
strategy behind it.
Right. Right. Yeah. I think, but also like, that's one. I think there's also the type of bootstrapper who, is listening to this show is probably going to think they're going to be somebody who, if you give them a challenge, like continue as you are, or I give you, 300 grand and more lifetime users to support, I bet they'll figure it out no matter what, too.
Yes.
Like there's also like, there's kind of no wrong answer because you're probably awesome at doing this and you'll figure it out. So I stress over decisions, but you alluded to this earlier, like we have to make so many decisions constantly and just go with them that um, I think part of SaaS is just moving fast and being okay with leaving a bit of the trail of mess that you kind of have to clean up and having that's just part of the game.
Yes.
It goes back to that like bootstrapper versus corporate demand gen, where like the corporate demand gen, it's all got to be buttoned up. The campaign's got to be perfect. There's not a lot of room to color outside the lines. Um, but I think the world needs more of that. I think the world needs more of that, like more entrepreneurial, be willing to be less buttoned up, just figure it out type of
Yeah.
mentality. But not everyone's like that. It's like just a risk tolerance thing of, do you bootstrap, do
Yeah.
you raise, do you go into corporate and take a job, do you do your own thing and spend some savings to get this dream up and running?
Yeah. Well, building a business is messy. There's no question about that. And so making those decisions, and some of them are going to be wrong. And you
Yeah.
just want those wrong decisions to be small and be able to adjust quickly and recognize that that wasn't the best decision, and to make a change.
Yeah, like being able to evaluate the risk of ruin on any decision you make is quickly is a super important skill because you can't move fast and break things if like every time you do that you have like a 1 in 3 chance of the whole thing coming down. Like that's not good,
Right.
Um, but if it's like something small and fixable, and I just need to be comfortable with imperfection emotionally, that's way easier than the sort of large risk of ruin thing, which comes back to like choice of channel too, because community, people think, oh man, if I say the wrong thing, I'm done. Like, no, you just apologize. It's actually pretty simple. You have to be just willing to apologize if you do say the wrong thing. Um, whereas some channels, you run the wrong Facebook ad, you get kicked off. You're done running
Right.
Facebook ads. Starting in February 2024, You send enough cold emails on your primary domain, and you will need yourself a new primary domain. Of that big Google announcement, right? So
Mm-hmm.
know the risk of ruin, I think, and make choices that require you to grow as a person if you mess up, not choices that will cause you to lose more than you're comfortable losing.
I think that's going to be really interesting to see what happens with email marketing
Yeah,
after that. Yeah, is it just going to be, burn a domain and then move to a new one and, have a
that's
bunch
what
of
everyone's
them?
talking about. But
Yeah.
it feels like you're kind of doing guerrilla warfare against um, a more indifferent but larger and far better funded opponent who could crush you if they
Yes.
wanted to. And it's just like, we hope they don't, I
Yeah.
feel like the cold email growth hacker crowd right now is probably just like, I'm in their groups. Like, that's what they're talking about, is just create 30 domains, not two, just create more domains. But then they're going to figure out which credit cards you're using to buy domains and tie them back
Right.
to you. And then they're going to
Right.
figure out like IP addresses and like, what are you just going to run forever? You're just step into the light, like get good at the stuff
Right.
that as is. I feel like such a goody two shoes saying like, we'll do the approved marketing, but it costs you so much mental energy to just run from a larger opponent constantly. Uh,
Right.
and man, I say this as somebody who at my last company, I was a head of sales. We were sending 20,000 cold emails a month. Half of those were automated templates, and we set 200 meetings a month. I hated it, but it worked. I recognize when that day is done, and I recognized that 4 years ago. And now the writing is finally coming on the wall. So yeah, I'm curious to see how the cold email growth hacking crowd goes. But like, if I was SalesLoft right now, I would not be having a good time. I would be very, very
Right.
stressed.
Right. Yeah, I think it really will be interesting. And then maybe that goes back to the bootstrap mindset of, we'll figure it out. So whatever the landscape is going to shift, and we'll figure it out.
Yeah, which is easier to do if you're smart lead or instantly than if you're SalesLoft.
Right.
If you're a corporation with a board, tough to figure that out. But if you're tiny, you can get with your co-founder and hash it out for 3 hours and come up with a solution, and then you just go with it. So there is a benefit to being small. That is one
Yeah.
thing that the small people have to their benefit is nimbleness is a real asset.
Yes, it
And
is.
maintaining that as you scale, like even if you get to be, this goes for like hiring too. Hrefs, their revenue per employee is what, 1 million plus?
Yep.
Nuts. What's BuiltWith's revenue per employee? 15 million. One guy, 50 million revenue.
It's
Like,
crazy numbers. Yeah.
nuts. Talk about nimble. Is just like, that's incredibly nimble. I'm not even that extreme, but like, don't go bloated. And don't think of hiring as a badge of honor, because it can get you in real trouble, because then you have emotional difficulty in saying we have to adapt to this market change, but people's livelihoods are in our hands, and it makes you make wrong decisions. Like, probably better to not have hired them in the first place if you didn't need it. In the name
Right.
of being lean, especially if you're bootstrapped, keep more of that cash. It's king.
Yeah, it's been really bizarre to me this last year. You look at some of the big tech companies, they'll cut 30, 40, 50%, 70% of their staff. It's like, what exactly were those people doing in the first place?
Yeah,
How did we get here?
I know. I have friends who work at Meta, and they're just like, they admit, over after a couple of glasses of wine, they're like, I don't really know what my job is. It's like, and you're getting paid
Wow.
$300,000 a year to not know what your job is. It's like,
Yeah.
um, yeah, if you could cut them and nothing truly breaks, you probably had the wrong team in the first place.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, looking at community-led growth, in some of the social selling, you said it's more difficult to see direct ROI from something like that. What are some of the highest ROI tactics that you've come across in the agency or in building Aware?
Um, Good question. I think you can do more attribution than you think. So there's two questions in there. One is it true that you can't do attribution? I don't think you can get exact, but you can do it. So we'll talk about that in a minute. But
Yeah.
higher ROI tactics, I'd say, would be executive posting. If you are the CEO, founder, your LinkedIn profile is something you should definitely use. I can already hear the howls of, but if you have a personal brand, no one's going to buy your company. the primary thing someone wants to buy is a profitable, growing company. So if your personal brand
Right.
is an efficient way of doing that, great. If you have to do an earnout where you spend 9 to 12 months transitioning your personal brand, so be it, like, but that's honestly not that big a deal. You write what, 20 LinkedIn posts and schedule them over the course of your earnout, and you do it. So I think people really, maybe this is my bias showing, but I think people really shy away from personal branding because they think it's cringy, and for that reason. It's not. It's just a method of
Yeah.
marketing that is more organic and personal. So do it. Plan it out. And like, you see bigger venture funded SaaS CEOs spending 2 hours a day on LinkedIn, and their companies are growing super well because their posts get hundreds of engagements. They reach, 1 million people every quarter. That's
Yeah.
huge. And they have no ad budget behind that. Nuts. I'm just about to test more thought leader ads, which is kind of the paid boosting equivalent of LinkedIn, which just came
Yep.
out. I don't want to share the results of a test that I'm just optimistic about, but there's some cool stuff there with like posting assets and lead magnets that took a while to create, that people comment on your post to receive, and then that juices up engagement, and then you pay to boost that further to the exact audience you want to see it. I'm going to do that myself soon, but I've seen examples of bootstrappers use that tactic to extremely good effect for like $500 in budget and get like hundreds of leads,
Wow.
which just requires creating an amazing lead magnet. Like, I spent
Right.
8 hours writing a 12,000 word book all about B2B SEO. It's good. It's really good. I slaved over it. Like, so there's some budget there to create that type of thing, but you can get your team to do that if they're good. Like, it doesn't have to be all you, but that's one thing. But you can just do that organically. Provide people with value organically. Give them stuff. Give them your well thought out response to something. That's a super high ROI. My average revenue per LinkedIn post is $13,000. It's pretty good. I don't spend that long writing.
Yeah.
And you stack that up, and it adds up. That's how we get to the 5.2 million we've clocked in already from social selling. So that's the biggest thing is the person with the biggest opinion and stature should be posting. Next is anybody in your team who has a knack for it, they should be posting. For a long time, when you thought of Gong, I still can't tell you the CEO of Gong's name, but I know Sarah Brazier. I know Udi Lederkor, not the CEO, people who post on LinkedIn. And isn't that interesting? Oh, Emmett
It
Bender.
is.
I just remembered it, but like, it took me
Yes.
a lot longer to remember the CEO's name. So get your team doing it too. And the last one is just engage, like, be present as well. Don't be aloof. You can get help engaging there. Some CEOs have a close lieutenant managing their LinkedIn, which I think is acceptable as long as it's not, horse shit that you're putting out. But like,
Yeah.
you can manage it as a team, a close team, and that's totally fine. You get help with it. In fact, a lot of CEOs have a team around them, making them look big on LinkedIn, where it doesn't take all their own time. So the community hack there is get help with engagement and content creation, but be like the spark of inspiration for what you're saying. That's super high ROI. A lot of SaaS CEOs and agency founders, like, if you dial that in, and you have to be smart about it. Like, if you don't have a lot of opinions on the industry, like, maybe it's not the best channel for you. But if you're that SaaS founder that really cares, that bootstraps because you're a zealot, then do it. That's super high ROI.
What do you think about video versus post? It seems like LinkedIn has gone the opposite way of other platforms where they kind of push video down and post higher, where other platforms it's
Mm.
reversed. I mean, the video gets more engagement and gets promoted more than text post.
That's a good question. I find that that's only true when you look at the reaction numbers and the view count.
Okay.
Part of this is because views are measured differently for video and more stringently than they are for text. So it's actually kind of a common misconception that video gets less engagement because a view for text is any impression. A video impression
Hmm.
is at least, I think it's like 3 seconds of watch time. So
Okay.
impressions for text posts are just counted much more easily. Remember the thing with Facebook where they did that for
Yeah.
ads? This is just for organic, but it's counted differently, number one. Number two is there's a subjective richness to good video content that you don't get with text. We're at minute approximately 40 of this recording. If you are still listening to this right now, you are proving that audio can have plenty more richness than you could have gotten if we just posted the summary of this podcast on a text post,
Right.
right? But now you've consumed 40 minutes. I look at my video posts, and an average of 8 hours of watch time across the impressions are on each video. So if I get, hundreds of potential buyers to consume the full 3 minutes of my video content, that's great. I just can't unpack as much as I can in video over text. If you can hear my voice and see my face and form some sort of connection through seeing me put myself out there, there's a richness to that you can't do through text too, where it's again more kind of
Yes.
black. So I don't actually think that LinkedIn penalizes video. It penalizes bad video because your average percent viewed on your video is going to be low. And if you maximize average percent
Gotcha.
viewed by being concise, scripting it out well, jump cutting out the stuff that doesn't belong in there, and just having something impactful to say, then your video will get great engagement. My videos get actually a pretty similar number of reactions as my text posts do, but they get better watch time. So I don't necessarily agree that it penalizes it. I just think you have to measure it a bit differently and recognize that LinkedIn just literally puts a different way of measuring it on it. And then we didn't talk about attribution. You can't do
Yes.
attribution. Add a first. If you're larger, more than 50 conversions a month, you can do marketing mix modeling. You can put in events, things you're doing, and then statistical modeling platforms can essentially measure based on what you're doing, whether that was impactful and caused the conversions to happen, or whether it was merely correlated with it. If you're smaller, you're probably going to have a good sense because people are going to tell you on demo calls how they heard about you. If you have a form that you capture leads from, the how did you hear about us field is going to store that data. And you can just go in your CRM and have a lead source drop down that includes things like heard about us on LinkedIn or CEO social or whatever it is. So and then you can track that to the MRR. So do attribution. Especially with like Google and Apple messing with cookies and privacy tracking, that's going to be more
Yeah.
accurate anyway. So let's just give up the idea that you can get perfect attribution and get within 85% closeness and use one of these methods. And I think you can definitely do attribution on community. We do. And we do it on influencers too. So it's nice with influencers and affiliates because they have an affiliate link. So I can do more like hard
Right.
attribution. So that's kind of a little cheat code. But even if they don't do it, I still pay attention to the somebody who comes in. If they mention an affiliate and it wasn't credited to them, I will manually add it to that affiliate's account, costing me more money to get better
Sure.
attribution, reward the affiliate. Like I'm very, very honest about it for all those reasons. And you can do all sorts of things to get 85% good attribution. So just it kind of the whole theme of this show has been don't expect perfection, get involved in it, pay attention to the pulse, and you'll get good enough to do great things without having to have perfection the whole time. If you can go from wanting 98% down to 89% accuracy, you'll uncap your growth in all these areas. I think so. That's the diatribe
That's
on
really, really good advice.
community attribution
Yeah.
and measurement, like all this stuff. Like if you can let go of the need to control and measure everything, you will go far. And that's a life lesson too.
That's good. We'll wrap up with this. If you had to choose just one marketing asset companies should invest their time and resources into, what one would that be and then why?
The consultant in me is going to have to say it depends. But for me, it'd be LinkedIn. I would ditch my newsletter, our outbound emails, our cold calls. If I just had one, it'd be LinkedIn. I would even turn off our SEO, which would be so painful, but I would have to do it. But for some people, it's SEO. Some people are just like their market's not on LinkedIn, but they have a solution people Google. And I'd be like, look, turn everything else off and keep SEO. Usually there's going to be one channel. And for For the businesses that I start, it tends to be LinkedIn, mostly because I already have this asset. So I'm going to create businesses for which that is the best channel. I'm less likely to buy or create a business that requires me to learn Facebook ads. I just don't know what I'm doing with Facebook ads. So why would
Yeah.
I get too involved there? But I think the answer will be different if you sell t-shirts, you're probably not going to care much about LinkedIn. So yeah, I'll just say subjectively, for everything that I'm involved in, LinkedIn is by far the best method and the asset that I'll keep. But I'm sure many people would say, no, for my own reasons, I have this other one. It's usually pretty easy to figure out what that one would be. But yeah, I don't post on Instagram, on Facebook. I only install TikTok once in a while, and then I uninstall it because it gets me. I scroll until it tells me to stop. So I'm not a social media person. I'm a LinkedIn capitalist, and I'll just go with that.
Love it. Love it. Well, where can people learn more about you and Aware and Revenue Zen online?
Where do you think? I'm gonna it's the same answer.
How about LinkedIn?
Yeah, I usually don't provide my email address is there. You can get it wherever you need to, but LinkedIn's like the sort of the gateway, the link tree, if you will, is there. You can find all the links to what I'm doing and what I'm working on. Just send me a DM and I'll direct traffic. It's probably the best way. Send me a connection request and just indicate what you want to talk about, and I'll just direct you from there. So you don't have to worry about going through my sales funnel, because the sales funnel is just us chatting. So yeah,
Nice. That's fantastic. We'll make sure to link that in the show notes, and everybody should go look at Aware and get on that, because it's not just a cool tool, although it is pretty cool,
great.
but it is extremely useful, super powerful as well. And I love that you haven't embraced the whole AI thing, and it is human to human communication, which
Yeah,
I think is the future of social.
definitely.
What it was designed for, right?
Yeah, exactly. I appreciate you having me on, Jeff. It's been great.
Thank you. Well, thanks again, Alex, for coming on the show and sharing your journey and insights. The thing that stuck out to me the most was his take on building solutions that are cool versus useful. And that is absolute gold. I've made that mistake before. We started using that when talking about enhancements. Is this cool or useful? And really focused on the highest value things. Well, as always, all links, highlights, resources, and full show notes are available at saasfuel.com. Subscribe and follow us there as well. And everyone who subscribes this week gets Presence by Proxy, an AI that understands your friends and family's likes and dislikes, curating a list of gifts so thoughtful they think you spent months of planning. Now the big question, automate or humanize? That's a tough one. Join us Thursday on our SaaS Fuel Expert Series, where my guest is AJ Wilcox from B2Linked.com. AJ demystifies LinkedIn ads and how you can use that as a starting point to be everywhere. And next Tuesday, we have founder Jonathan Fields, CEO and co-founder of Assembly, an intranet focused on communication, employee engagement that uses AI. We'll talk about non-traditional ways to scale a SaaS. I will see you next time, and as always, enjoy the journey.
Thanks for listening to SaaS Fuel. Full show notes for each episode, which includes a summary, key takeaways, quotes, and any resources mentioned, are available at saasfuel.com. Be sure to follow and subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts. And if you're enjoying the content and getting value from these episodes, please leave us a rating and review at ratethispodcast.com/saasfuel. We'll be sure to read these out on future episodes.
Let's go!